So David, because I'm not preaching on that, David is running from Saul, and the problem will always find you. No matter where you run, don't run from the problem. You got to face it because it'll find you. But watch this. David's running from Saul, and he flees to Gath. Now, Gath is an interesting city because this is the place where David killed Goliath. And before I can progress in this story, we have to first deal with a common misperception. Malcolm Gladwell wrote an incredible book on David and Goliath that I recommend, but I'll give you the short notes to it now. You can have the cliff notes, if you will. Malcolm Gladwell makes a wonderful case that David was not the underdog, because we've been trained on this wonderful story of this young shepherd boy being the underdog to the giant Goliath and taking him down by the sheer power of God. But I want to tell you it's not true. It's not only that God was with David. It's that David had something else that we're not aware of in modern society. See, what you have to understand is that whenever a representative would fight on behalf of an army, it would always be infantryman against infantryman, which means two infantry guys would square off to represent in the battle. And this is what you had here. You had Israel on one side of a ravine, and you had the Philistines on the other. There was a deep chasm that separated the two. David hears the blasphemy of Goliath and immediately goes to Saul and says, I will fight. Now, you got to understand something. First of all, what I like about David is he didn't just fight for the sake of fighting. He wanted to know what he was going to get. And when he heard that you would get the king's daughter, which would put him in the royal bloodline, and that you wouldn't have to pay taxes for the rest of your life, he says, sign me up. And let me tell you something. I used to be in the military. I was only in the military for 4 years, but if I got a phone call right now to go fight and I would never have to pay taxes again, I would be on a plane tonight. Y'all would not see me on Saturday. I promise you. But David said, okay, since I know what I'm going to get, I'm ready to fight. Saul says, you're not ready. He said, I'm ready. What turned Saul to make David think that he was a capable fighter? It was when David said, I killed the lion and the bear with my sling. Why did this move Saul? In fact, Saul attempted to put his infantry gear onto David. And it wasn't that it didn't fit David. It was that David was not an infantryman. But whenever you stage this kind of battle, it's infantry against infantry. You have to understand there were three types of warfare. We still have it today, but it's mechanized. But the three types of warfare, you have the infantry, you have the cavalry, and you have the artillery. If you want to beat the cavalry, you send the infantry out. But if you want to beat the infantry, you send out the artillery, because the artilleryman has the ability to kill the enemy from long distances. Now, within the artillery was an elite group of assassins known as the slingers. The slingers were so gifted that even up until Roman times, they would use special tongs to pull the stones out of the head of their wounded soldiers. It is said that a slinger could throw a rock at the same speed, velocity, and strength of a .45 caliber pistol. In other words, a slinger was a Green Beret. A slinger was with SEAL Team 6. A slinger was the most elite soldier in the military. When David told Saul what he could do, Saul knew immediately that he had the skill set to take down the giant. If it would have been infantry against infantry, Israel would have lost. But because they thought on the battle in a different way and the strategy was different. Listen, if you're going to take down a giant, you got to have a different strategy. And because the strategy was different, God sent out an elite assassin that had the authority and the ability to kill the giant at long distances. My question is then, why in the world would Goliath fight David if he knew he was fighting a slinger? Well, the first thing you have to understand, and we're going to get to our story in just a minute. I'm just trying to set you up. This is called upsetting the equilibrium in order to engage you in conversation. I know what I'm doing. I'm telling you what I'm doing. Watch this. So what Goliath had going on is Goliath had gigantism. Now, he was a giant by reason of his blood, but he was bigger than all the other giants. He was a formidable force. But his gigantism, we have found, had posed a different problem in his life. Anybody that has gigantism deals with an oversized pituitary gland, which causes abnormal growth in the body. The other problem with this particular situation with the pituitary gland is it presses against the optic nerve, which means that most people with this problem lose their sight and eventually become blind. I want to suggest to you that the reason why he would even step into the ring with this man is because he couldn't see him. Because if he could have saw he was facing a slinger, he would have known that he was going to lose before the battle even begun. Oh, can I prove it even further? I'll prove it to you. The Bible says that Goliath had someone carrying his armor. Now, what you have to understand is an infantry soldier always carries his own gear. Only if you're a king do you have an armor bearer. So I want to suggest to you that this man was not just carrying his gear, he was his guide to get him into the circle for the fight because he couldn't see. Oh, I can go even further. When he saw David, he said, "You come at me with sticks," plural. But the Bible specifically says that David only had one staff in his hand, which means his sight was so bad he was seeing more than one staff in David's hand. But I come to tell you that David was not the underdog. David knew the moment he stepped in the ring that he was going to take down the giant. And I come to tell somebody tonight that's facing some giants, and y'all looking at me like I ain't preaching right, but I'm preaching good in here. I'm looking at some folks that are facing some giants in your life, and I come to tell you, you've been undervalued. You've been said that you don't have what it takes, but you've got the power of an elite assassin in your spirit, and you're getting ready to chop the head off of the enemy. Somebody shout hallelujah in here. So because of this great victory that David had, he was inclined when he got scared to go back to the last place he was celebrating. Now, you won't admit it, but this is what we all do. We all celebrated. Laws of I could never be, but I love all of the belief and the thought and the cerebral energy that surrounds the physicist's mind. I love the universe. I love the vastness of it. I love the study of it. I love all of the theory, and I love Newton. Newton said every object in motion will remain in motion at constant velocity until acted upon by an outside force. Most of us know that law. It's one of Newton's third law of motion, but what we don't know is the law of the pendulum. Newton theorized that if an object was tied to a rope, that once it was released, it wouldn't come back to its original place. So I tried to do this. I took my daughter, one of my daughters, and I pulled her back on the swing set. I held her against my face and I released her. Now, I didn't know if the law was going to work or not, but I was going to try it. I stood in my position, and when my daughter came back, she stopped about a half an inch from my face. Every time she went out, she was further away from me, and the Lord spoke to me. And he said, I only give you enough momentum to launch out into what I've called you to do. I never give you enough to go back where you came from. Your mind has been expanded too much. You've seen too much. You've been through too much to go back. You can't hang out with the same people. They won't celebrate you like they celebrated you. Why? Because you've been changed because of what you've been exposed to. And I don't know about y'all, but I don't want to go back. I'm ready to move into the vision that God has for my life. I'm ready to move into the greatness that God has for my life. But first I have to stop the madness that's going on. Slap somebody a high five. Tell them stop the madness. So David David tries to go back. And what's funny is, I think he thought he could hide. But he couldn't hide. Because there was a song sang in Israel when he defeated Goliath. Saul has killed his thousands. David has killed his 10,000s. And it is known and believed by most theologians that even the people of the Philistines were so impressed by David's victory that they started singing the song. Now you know you're bad when your enemies start singing your praises. I wish I had somebody that would believe that this is the season that God is getting ready to make all your haters have to celebrate what God is doing in your life. Okay. David put it like this. He said, thou hast prepared a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. That word prepare is a Hebrew word that means to tax, which means what he's actually saying is God will tax my enemies to pay for my party. I'll put it like this. I just don't accept haters anymore. I'm going to make up a hater application. That's right. Because if you're going to pay for my party, I'm going somewhere big. So you better have some good credit. You better have some money in the bank. You better have some assets. Because if you're going to hate on me, it's going to cost you something. Listen, you got to stop letting broke people be your haters. You got to stop letting people that are going nowhere in their life get in your headspace. You got to stop allowing people that have no future and no dream to access that part of your mind that drives you crazy. They're not even worthy to be your hater. Slap somebody a high five and tell them, say, get some real haters. I want some millionaire haters. Come on. Watch this. I'm sweating already. So they bring David before King Achish. And this is why I'm not a big fan of ancient commentary. Because it's so steeped in Christology that it doesn't deal with humanism. It doesn't deal with the humanistic side of man. Everything is shrouded under Christ. And why this poses a problem is because if you do this with the text, then you have to make an excuse for why David acted the way he did. And they try. David let spit run down his beard. He clawed on the wall and the door. And he feigned himself as a crazy man. Now, if you take the commentary, Israel can't be acting crazy. He had to have had a medical condition. Some of them say that God gave him a dispensation of time where he was allowed to function this way. Some say that he had a moment of temporary insanity. But the truth is, David acted crazy. And I'm going to tell you why in just a few moments. But he acted crazy. He wasn't crazy, but he acted crazy. And the reason why I know it's not beyond David's character is because David didn't always have good character. First of all, we have to be fair to David. He is the most examined person in Scripture. No other life is examined from childhood all the way to death like David. Nobody. Nobody's put under that microscope. If I examined your life and wrote a book about it from your birth to your death, I promise you there's some chapters that you wish I would leave out. But David had some serious issues. If I had time, I'd tell you some of them, but y'all don't want me to preach tonight. David's greatest issue, since 4 preachers want me to preach, they're the only ones that said preach. I'll talk to y'all. They don't want me to preach. David's primary issue was with his father. Yeah. He called his brothers out to be anointed king, but he left David in the field. In fact, he called him the little one, Hakatan in the Hebrew, which means insignificant. Which means when his father looked at him, he looked at him as being insignificant. The worst wound a man can endure is the wounding of his father. I should know, I never knew mine, which created a wound in my life that I'm still healing from. Why y'all looking at me funny? I ain't got it all together. I'm working on it. But he was wounded by his father. This created a cycle in his life. Most scientists connect sexual addiction with wounds from childhood, which explains the reason why David couldn't leave women alone. Oh, y'all looking at me funny. David had a serious woman problem. It was so serious that when he was on his deathbed, they took a young virgin and slipped her in the bed with him, and when he didn't respond, they said, oh, the king is dead. Because if he wasn't going to move off anything, he's going to move for that. So David had issues, and he acted crazy, and it worked. The king said, this is no king. Send him from my presence. David found himself in the cave of Adullam, and I'm almost finished now because y'all don't like this. I'm enjoying it. But David finds himself in the cave of Adullam. And this is the place where all the crooks hung out. Yeah, all of the thieves, all of those that were in debt, those that had warrants out, they all went to Adullam. And it is from this group that David formed his army. That's what made David such a great leader. He could take a group of convicts and turn them into an army. I remember I was preaching on the Treasure Coast in Florida one time. I was asked to do this community event, and I had gone to it before. And it's when I was pastoring in South Florida. And I'd gone to these community events. And when they asked me to speak, I told my wife about 2 hours before, I said, they're never going to ask me to speak again. She said, oh, God, what are you going to do? I said, well, all they talk about in these meetings is the community this and the community that, the community, the community, the community. That's all I hear. I'm going to preach the problem is the community. And what I told him is I've been coming to these community events and I keep seeing the same people. Which means when you say community, you have a different word than I do. You mean Christian community. When I think of community, I want to smell some weed in the church. When I say community, I want somebody in the back drunk. When I say community, I mean somebody that stumbled in here before they go into the club, think they might want to get saved before they go. Y'all looking at me so funny. I'm talking about the community. I'm looking for somebody that was on the pole last night and trying to get on the cross tonight. So what you call the community and what I call the community are two different things. I mean the real community, the pushers and the hustlers and the pimps. And oh, I wish I could talk to somebody. Needless to say, they never asked me to preach again. But that's what David did. David took the undesirables of the community and turned them into an army. And it is said that from this backdrop, this is where David wrote Psalms 34. But I disagree. And the reason I disagree, my first disagreement is simple. Because Psalms 34 talks about the Lord's deliverance. The whole psalm is connected to God delivering. And the problem is God did not deliver David. David delivered himself by acting crazy. Okay. I want to talk to somebody that'll be real with me tonight. I want to just talk to somebody that'll be real with me. I can't really blame David because I've had a season of stupid. Oh, A season of stupid is when you do what you said you would never do. A season of stupid is when you deleted that phone number, but you knew you had it on backup. And you called it up when you needed to call it up because you were having a season of stupid. Can I talk to somebody in here? Look at somebody and say, no more seasons of stupid. You will do some crazy things in a season of stupid that'll mess you up for the rest of your life. So, I'm going to tell you why, when I believe David wrote this. But first, I got to relieve you of the tension. Because the truth is, David's problem was not Saul. His problem was not Achish. David's problem was fear. Fear made him act crazy. Psychology states there are only really two true emotions: fear and love. That's why the Bible says perfect love casts out fear. Because you got to make a choice between which one you're going to deal with. Now, I was going to preach something tonight, but I decided to preach this instead. I was going to preach, if you ain't scared, you're not doing it right. Because the truth is, people have told you that fear and faith cannot cohabitate. I want to tell you that's a lie. Paul Tillich, one of the greatest theologians of the 20th century, said that fear or doubt is not the opposite of faith, but a part of faith. Meaning, when you have a real vision from God, the first thing that happens is fear grips your body. And the reason why is because a God dream is so big, you're afraid whether or not you can make it happen. And you have to lean on God and know that if he don't bring it to pass, it won't happen. So I believe that fear is necessary for real dreamers. When people tell me I ain't scared of nothing, well, you're not dreaming big enough, because the dream should be so big it scares you to walk into it. Watch this now. Fear was David's problem. It caused him to act like a crazy man. But really, David eventually learned his lesson. I believe somehow he grabbed a hold of prophetically the New Testament verse in 2 Timothy 1:7 that says, God has not given us the spirit of fear or the spirit of a coward. In other words, you may have fear in your life, but don't be afraid to walk through the pain. Don't be afraid to walk through the fire. Don't be afraid to walk through whatever you got to walk through, because if you hold on to the Lord, he's going to bring you out on the other side. Watch this. I believe that David, he said he hasn't given us a spirit of fear but of power. David learned power when he killed Goliath. He hasn't given us the spirit of fear but of power and of love. He learned love when he had the ability to kill his chief antagonist, Saul, but he wouldn't touch the Lord's anointing. Oh, if I had time to talk about love. I must not have time. Y'all didn't say preach. First of all, I want to tell you, when people say David was a man after God's own heart, I'm going to tell you why. Because he wouldn't touch the Lord's anointing. That's what made him a man after God's own heart. That he wouldn't kill a man that deserved to die. Oh. But love. Since we talked about fear, let's talk about love just for a second. In the quintessential work on the art of preaching, called The Homiletical Plot, Lowry makes a good presentation on how you should preach about love. We always tell people that they should love. You should love everybody. You should love your neighbor. You should love this. You should love that Christian love. But we're really missing the mark in the presentation. He says the proper way to present love is like this. Have you ever extended the hand of love only to bring it back wounded, cut, and bruised? Why? Because love is a risk. The truth is, you don't love somebody until you're willing to put your heart on the line. You don't love somebody until you're willing to risk it. I can't stand for people to come to me, complete strangers, and say, I love you with the love of the Lord. No, you don't. Where were you when my lights were turned off? Where were you when I was getting kicked out of my house? Where were you when I couldn't keep the heat on? Where were you at? You don't love me. You just want to say it because it's the thing to say. Real love is taking a risk on me. Watch this. Watch this. I believe that David learned love when he didn't kill Saul. And David learned to get a sound mind in reflection. And this is the revelation to the whole text. David didn't write this song in the cave of Adullam. Because if David wrote it there, then we can't close the gap between David's behavior and God's deliverance. Which means that this particular psalm had to be placed at a different time. Modern theologians have theorized that this particular psalm, that David wrote it as an old man. Which means that here is David as an old man looking back over his life. And what he was saying in essence is, I made a mistake. Instead of, y'all can come on now, musicians, instead of me acting crazy what I should have done, he wrote Psalms 34:1 and said, what I should have done is lifted up my hands and said, I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praise shall continually be in my mouth. In other words, what David was saying is that instead of me acting crazy, I should have gave God the praise right where I was. And I come to tell somebody that's in a crazy situation, you don't have to act like your struggle. You don't have to act like your problem. You don't have to act like the pain. But all you need to do is throw up your hands and say, I will bless the Lord at all times, and his praise shall continually be in my mouth. High five your neighbor and say, neighbor, what you need is a praise. You don't need to act crazy. The madness stops right here. Tonight we're going to stop the madness, and it begins with my shout. It begins with my hand clap. It begins with my and I'm getting ready to give God a crazy praise in the middle of a crazy situation. Somebody shout yeah, shout yeah, shout yes, Lord. I got to close here, y'all. But there was a man by the name of blind Bartimaeus. He lived in a city called Jericho. The Greek word Jericho has the root word luna, the same word we get for lunatic. In other words, when he heard that Jesus was coming, lean on your neighbor and say, neighbor, y'all ain't leaning on nobody. Lean on your neighbor and say, neighbor, help is on the way. Help is on the way. Jesus is on the way. Breakthrough is on the way. Change is on the way. Healing is on the way. Miracles are on the way. Somebody shout, it's on the way. When he heard that Jesus was coming, he decided to act like his city, and he threw up his hands, opened up his mouth, and began to holler, and acted like the crazy city that he came from. Look at somebody and tell them, I'm in the middle of a crazy situation, but I'm getting ready to give God praise like I lost my mind. I'm getting ready to dance like I got it, shout like I got it, like I got it. Clap your hands, open up your mouth, and shout yeah, shout yeah, shout yeah. Why am I saying yes? I'm
I'm saying yes to my healing. Yes to my miracle. Yes to my turnaround. I wish somebody would turn around one time and shout, Lord, turn it around on my job, in my family, in my life. Turn it around. Shout yeah. Shout yeah. Shout yeah. Yeah. Slap somebody a high five and tell them, say, stop the madness, stop the madness. I wish I had some praisers. I wish I had some praisers. I don't need everybody. I just need a few praisers. I just need a few praisers that'll take the next 30 seconds and give God a praise. Yeah. If you mess with me, I'll dance my way out of this. I'll shout my way out of this. I'll praise my way out of this. I feel a praise coming on. I feel a shout coming on. I feel a holler coming on. I'm getting ready to give God a crazy praise. Shout yeah. Shout yeah. Shout yeah. I wish I had some dancers. I feel like giving God a dance. I wish I had some praisers that would give God a praise. Come on, give him praise. Soul say yeah, yeah. Now throw up your hands and shout yeah. Shout yeah. Shout yeah. Shout yeah. Come on, give him praise. Come on, give him praise. Now throw up your hands and give him praise. Come on, give him praise. I feel something, y'all. I feel something. Wait a minute. Wait. Get ready to bring me right back to that shout. This lady in the pink clapping your hands. I don't do a bunch of prophesying, but God said when you dance, this next dance is going to release that house in your life. This next dance is going to release that house in your life. Now come on, give God a praise. Give him.
Lift your hands. Lift your hands. See, I'm trying to move forward, but what I say unto one, I say unto all. Which means if you connect with that word, you should have been dancing too. If you connected with that word, you should have been shouting too. I gotta stop. Lift your hands. Lift your hands. Tell somebody, stop the madness. The first move you got to make. I don't preach praise messages anymore, so I was happy about preaching this. Took me back to my Kojic roots. In Kojic, you always close with praise, always. But no matter how much education you got, no matter where you come from, nothing can substitute praise. Praise is a faith-filled action. It says that you have what you're believing for. You act like you got it. I just need a few folks that believe it's already done. Take the next 10 seconds and give God an already done praise. Come on, give him praise. Lift your hands. Lift your hands. I feel like somebody's one praise away. One praise away. See, you remember when you hadn't been in church for a long time, you didn't know like a whole lot about church, and you had like a David mindset for real? I will enter into his gates with thanksgiving, into his courts with praise. The praise team used to have to catch up to you. See, sometimes you got to put away everything you think you know and just let God have his way in your life for about a good 10 minutes. I mean, have I got some folks that are ready to let the Lord have his way for about a good 5 minutes? If you're ready, come on, clap your hands, open up your mouth, and give him praise. Hallelujah. Now lift up your hands and shout, yeah, yeah. Somebody shout, yeah. Shout, yeah. All right, lift your hands. Lift your hands. Father, in Jesus' name, Lord, we thank you for your presence that's in this place. Now, while you're here, God, look on every situation. Look on every problem. And I pray that you move supernaturally. Don't let one person that came in here leave the same way they came. But as we have praised you, God, we gave you a crazy praise and a crazy situation. Turn that situation around right now. And we thank you for it. Come on, clap your hands and bless the Lord. Sound good to me. All right. All right. All right, lift your hands. Lift your hands. Y'all feel it? Shift in the atmosphere. Now listen, I need to do something. I need to do something. I was in this house, and I was going to buy this house. I was renting it, but I was going to buy it. And I put all this money down, had all my ducks in order, but I had this one thing. And this thing, it's actually taken care of, but it doesn't appear to be taken care of. So I produced the paperwork to prove that it was at a zero status, zero balance. And the mortgage company denied the loan, which put me in a position to have to move out of the house that I'm in and find another house. And I had just haphazardly put in for another loan. I was telling him in the car on the way over here, I put in for another loan with another loan company, but I was having a glitch on the computer and it wouldn't take all the information, so I just stopped. So I was down on my knees praying, and I had done something previous to this prayer, and I'll share that with you in just a moment. But I was down on my knees praying, and I said, God, I need you to speak to me concerning this. I need you to talk to me today. And the first thing that happened while I'm on my knees asking God to speak to me, the phone rings. I answer the phone. It's the loan company that had the incomplete application. And she said, so I felt like God was talking. So I said, well, I tried to fill it out, but there's a problem with your website. She said, well, I'll input everything manually. So she filled the whole thing out for me. And I got approved for a house twice the size of the one I was in. And they accepted my paperwork that explained my situation. Are y'all talking to me in here? So now when things start happening, I kind of like to get on a roll. So I was sitting in my chair, and I had two of my kids in my lap, and I was flipping through some scriptures while they were watching some cartoons, because I'm watching cartoons all the time with these kids in my house. And I flipped through this scripture. It's talking about the heart being heavy, but a good word makes you feel better. I don't remember what version I was reading. And I just said to myself, Lord, I need a good word. Now, he had just given me one, but I said, I need another good word. I had been waiting on my publishing company to release a check. And honestly, they wasn't returning my calls, so I didn't know if the deal had still gone through, if all the contracts I had signed were valid or not. But they had to pay me $30,000 for 3 books. Now, I have a 4-book deal. I've written 3 of the 4 already. They already have them. So I'm expecting this money to start coming in. So as soon as I said that out of my mouth, I said, God, I need a good word. My wife drops a $10,000 check in front of my face from my publishing company. Come on, somebody. Tell somebody, I need a good word. I need a good word. I need a good word. But I did something. Y'all just pause for a minute. I did something that week that caused this to happen. And I've been wrestling with doing this tonight for a myriad of reasons. But I didn't want to do it. But I knew before I got up to preach, and I knew while I was preaching that I had to do it. Now, what I'm about to do is easy when I'm preaching for Bishop Jakes, because I got 10,000 people in the building. It's easy. It's easy if I'm preaching for Noel Jones, because I got the people in the building. I mean, it's a great crowd. I'm not putting your crowd down at all. But I'm just talking about if you put 10,000 people in the building, I got a greater chance mathematically of what I'm about to say working. Are y'all catching what I'm saying? Yeah. If I'll be preaching in Manpower this year in MegaFest, it'll be easy if I do it there. But he don't always. I'm going to, brother. Pray for me. I got a message, man. I mean, I got a message. I got something, man, nobody has ever saw. I'm going to show you where the child of a rape became the wife of Joseph. Yeah, I got a message. I got a message, y'all. It's powerful. I can't wait to release. That's just a little touch for y'all. When you find out how she was found and where she came from and who she gave birth to. All right. See, I always thought Joseph named his firstborn son Manasseh, caused me to forget because he wanted to forget what his brothers did. That's not why. His wife was trying to forget what she went through. We'll talk about that in Manpower. So anyway, I was in a service. I think I was at the Pastors and Leaders Conference with Bishop Jakes, and I actually raised 2 offerings there. I did the musical offering. I did the first session of the first day, the offering there. But then the next person that came to receive the offering, are y'all getting quiet because I'm doing the offering? The next person that came to receive the offering was my good friend, Bishop Henry Fernandez. He has an incredible church in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Incredible ministry. And he asked for a certain seed. And I knew that the house I wanted was attached to that seed. And I sold it. Now, this is me not having a loan at all, because this one thing was hindering me. But I sold this seed and was able to qualify for a house twice the size house I was in. And this was a nice house. I mean, I got 7 people in my house. I can tell you, I got to have a big house. This house, I'm going to show you the pictures of it. Unbelievable. And the amazing thing about the house is it presents like $1 million house, but I'm getting it for $500,000. Now, that ain't nothing but God. Come on, this house got chandeliers in it. It's got this shower that you step into, and it's like a circle, and it has a TV in it, and it can do a spa treatment. It can do what's that thing with the smoke? Sauna. It can do all that stuff. Got a flat screen TV in it. I mean, this place is laid out. Got a movie theater in it. This place is off the charts. But if I would have stayed in the other house that I really wanted, I would have missed the one that God had for me. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying? Y'all getting so quiet. But I trace it all back to the seed I sowed in that service. And that might be why I'm prophesying a house over you, because I got a house anointing on me right now. How many of y'all heard me preach here the last time I was here on a Sunday? I told y'all about that $1 million house that God gave me free and clear. When I got a house anointing on me, you better tap into it. It's on me right now. But watch this. I was challenged to sow a seed. And Bishop Fernandez gave his testimony about how God had blessed him to buy his building, $7 million. A guy came and paid cash for it, bought it for him. And he asked for a certain seed. And I'm filibustering around with this right now because this is a serious seed. And if I gauge it just off my numbers, then I won't do it. But if I gauge it off what I heard, then it makes me move by faith. And I believe that somebody in here, in fact, there's several that can do it, but if you move on this offering, what I'm about to ask, God is getting ready to shift your life. In fact, this is going to be a seed that ignites your vision. This is going to be a seed that causes your dreams to come to pass. This is going to be a seed that opens up doors that no man can shut. And it's not a small seed. I want to challenge every person in here that is ready for the next level to be open to you. Hold on, let me say this before I give you this amount. Pastor, You sold a $500 seed the last time I was here and sold yourself right into a brand new truck, didn't you? That you wasn't even trying to get, they made you get it. And I had testimonies pouring in from this church of people that give it. And that's what I want to say. When you get ready to sow this amount that I'm about to ask you for, I'm believing the testimony is going to come this week. Somebody say this week. I got one thing holding me back on this house, and it's a rule with the HOA. And I was about to let it go, and my mother-in-law said to me, she said, you have never let anybody tell you no. I was like, you're right. When somebody says no to me, I hear yes. So I called the president on the phone and had a great conversation with him, and I'll know by tomorrow, but I think I turned him. Are y'all hearing me in here? This is the power of a seed. Tell your neighbor, say the power of a seed. Y'all quiet because y'all scared of what I'm going to ask for. If you don't have it, I'm not talking to you, but there's some in here that do have it. The Lord was dealing with me on the way over here. He's dealing with me when I was sitting in that seat, and he's dealing with me right now. That every person in here that's ready to move to the next dimension in your life, to get a seed of $1,000 in your hand. $1,000. I want you to challenge yourself. I know it's here. When you get that seed, I want you to get it. I want you to come stand right here with me, and I'm going to pray for you. Bishop's going to be the first to give it. There's some more that can give it. That's right, celebrate him, celebrate him. But it's not just him. There's some more that can sow this seed. I want you to challenge yourself tonight. I want you to have a testimony of God's greatness. And I know it's a challenge on a Thursday night in this kind of meeting to ask for a $1,000 seed. But I know what's attached to it. God's getting ready to open up some doors for you that no man can shut. God is getting ready to shift the dynamic of your life. Things that seemed impossible, God is going to turn them around and make them work in your favor. There's some more that can sow this seed. I want you to get it in your hand. I want you to come. Why would I sow a seed of $1,000? Because I believe that this is my season for change. I want a testimony of what God has done in my life. I want you to get it and come. I know you're in here. Thank you, Bishop, for sowing. You're not the only one. There's some more that can sow this seed of $1,000. I want you to get it and come. Why would I sow this in the church? Because I am so tired of being where I am. And let me tell you something about a $1,000 seed. Every time I have ever sowed it, it has completely changed my life. Every single time. I remember a preacher came to hear me once preaching in Florida. And he was a TBN host. I wanted to be on TBN.